Before the Industrial Revolution, life for most people in Europe and America revolved around farming and village communities. For centuries, the pace of life was determined by the rising and setting of the sun and the changing seasons. Most goods, from clothing to tools, were crafted by hand in small workshops or homes, a system known as cottage industry. In the mid-18th century, however, a unique set of conditions in Great Britain began to spark a global transformation. Britain possessed abundant natural resources, particularly coal and iron ore, which were essential for industrial growth. The country had navigable rivers and a coastline that facilitated trade and the transport of raw materials. A stable government and a strong banking system encouraged investment and entrepreneurship. The agricultural revolution had previously increased food production, leading to a population boom and a surplus workforce. Wealthy landowners had enclosed common lands, forcing many peasants to seek employment elsewhere. This displaced population created a ready supply of labor for the burgeoning factories. The spark that ignited the revolution occurred in the textile industry, specifically in cotton production. The demand for cotton cloth was growing faster than traditional hand spinning, and weaving could satisfy. In 1733, John Kay invented the flying shuttle, which doubled the speed at which a weaver could work. This invention created a bottleneck, as spinners could not produce thread fast enough to keep up with the weavers. James Hargreaves solved this in 1764 with the invention of the spinning jenny, allowing one spinner to work 8 threads at once. Richard Arkwright followed in 1769 with the water frame, a machine powered by water wheels that produced stronger thread. These machines were too large and expensive for home use, leading to the construction of the first factories. Factories were initially built near fast-flowing rivers to harness water power for the machinery. In 1779, Samuel Crompton combined features of the jenny and the water frame to create the spinning mule. The spinning mule produced fine, strong thread and further industrialized the spinning process. Edmund Cartwright invented the power loom in 1785, which mechanized weaving and eventually replaced hand weavers. The efficiency of these machines decimated the traditional cottage industry, forcing weavers into factories. Cotton production skyrocketed, and British textiles began to dominate global markets. To feed these machines, the demand for raw cotton from the Americas increased dramatically. This demand unfortunately entrenched and expanded the institution of slavery in the United States. In 1793, Eli Whitney's cotton gin made processing raw cotton 50 times more efficient. The textile industry became the first model of the factory system, where workers gathered in a central location. This system introduced the division of labor, where workers performed specific, repetitive tasks. Factory owners enforced strict discipline, with long hours and rigid schedules. The rhythm of work shifted from the seasons to the relentless pace of the machine. While textiles led the way, the development of steam power was the engine that drove the revolution forward. Early steam engines, like those by Thomas Newcomen, were inefficient and mostly used to pump water from mines. In the 1760s, James Watt, a Scottish instrument maker, began improving Newcomen's design. Steam engines could now power factories anywhere, freeing them from the need to be located near rivers. The adoption of steam power created a massive demand for coal, the primary fuel for these engines. Coal mining became a major industry, with deeper and more dangerous mines being dug. The iron industry also underwent a transformation, driven by the need for stronger machines and infrastructure. Traditionally, iron was smelted using charcoal, which required vast amounts of wood. Abraham Darby pioneered the use of coke, a derivative of coal, to smelt iron in the early 18th century. This method produced cheaper and more durable iron, allowing for larger structures and machines. Henry Cort later developed the puddling process, which refined pig iron into high-quality wrought iron. Cheap iron allowed for the construction of iron bridges, such as the famous Iron Bridge in Shropshire. It also enabled the mass production of tools, machinery, and eventually, rails for trains. The synergy between coal, iron, and steam became the self-sustaining cycle of industrial growth. Steam engines pumped water from coal mines, coal fired the engines, and iron built the engines and mines. This heavy industry base laid the groundwork for modern engineering and construction. Innovation in machine tools, like the lathe, allowed for precision manufacturing of metal parts. Standardized parts meant that machines could be repaired easily and mass-produced efficiently. As production increased, the need for better transportation networks to move goods became critical. In the mid-1700s, Britain experienced a canal mania, building man-made waterways to connect rivers and cities. Canals dramatically reduced the cost of transporting heavy goods like coal and iron. However, the most revolutionary advance in transport was the steam locomotive. Richard Trevithick built the first steam locomotive to run on rails in 1804. George Stephenson later refined the technology, building the famous Rocket in 1829. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway, opening in 1830, was the first intercity passenger railway. Railways spread rapidly across Britain, connecting industrial hubs and ports. They allowed for the rapid movement of people, raw materials, and finished products. The demand for iron and coal to build and run railways further stimulated the economy. Steam power also revolutionized water transport with the invention of the steamboat. Robert Fulton's Clermont proved the commercial viability of steamboats in 1807. Steamships could travel upstream and against the wind, transforming river and ocean trade. By the mid-19th century, steamships were crossing the Atlantic, shrinking the globe. Improved roads, built by engineers like John McAdam, facilitated smoother land travel. The macadamization process created durable road surfaces that could support heavy traffic. Transportation improvements led to lower prices for goods and a more interconnected national economy. They also allowed perishable goods like milk and fresh food to reach growing urban populations. The speed of communication also improved with the advent of the telegraph in the 1830s. Although coming late in the first industrial revolution, the telegraph laid the groundwork for the information age. The industrial shifts triggered massive social changes, most notably rapid urbanization. People flocked from the countryside to industrial towns like Manchester, Birmingham, and Leeds. Cities grew at an unprecedented rate, often without proper planning or infrastructure. This rapid growth led to overcrowding, pollution, and unsanitary living conditions. Working-class families often lived in cramped tenements with little access to clean water. Diseases like cholera and typhoid spread easily in these squalid environments. Factory work was often dangerous, with few safety regulations to protect employees from machinery. Men, women, and even young children worked long shifts, often 12 to 16 hours a day. The traditional family structure changed, as work and home were now completely separated. A new class structure emerged, defined by the wealthy industrial bourgeoisie and the working proletariat. The gap between the rich factory owners and the poor workers widened significantly. Social unrest began to simmer, leading to movements like the Luddites who destroyed machinery in protest. Workers eventually began to organize into unions to demand better wages and safer conditions. Despite the hardships, the revolution also created a growing middle class with disposable income. This new middle class drove the demand for mass-produced consumer goods. Over time, the standard of living began to rise for the general population, though inequality persisted. The Industrial Revolution eventually spread beyond Britain to Belgium, France, Germany, and the United States. In America, the textile industry took root in New England, exemplified by the Lowell Mills. By 1850, the first Industrial Revolution had fundamentally altered human society and the global economy. It marked the transition from an agrarian world to a modern, industrial one. This period laid the necessary foundation for the technological advancements of the 20th century. The world had been irrevocably changed, setting the stage for the Second Industrial Revolution.